Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to be here today to talk about second-hand market and notably why the second-hand market can increase your retention. So just a quick word before I move into the topic on me, so you know who I am and why I'm here. So I'm Thomas Gueridon. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Playthora. So Playthora is a SaaS solution allowing studios and publishers to open a second-hand market for virtual items. So just a quick disclaimer, I'm not here to sell you anything, as I decided to stop taking this position. So I will just try to give you back everything I learned in the past 3 years working on this project, and I hope you will have some good takeaways at the end of this talk. About me, what I can say is, of course, I'm a gamer, like most people in this space. I've played many games, notably RTS and MOBAs for many years before joining AXA, the global insurance company, where I had the chance to work for 4 years. And then in the past 2 years, I had a chance to develop Playthora within AXA. So I was working in incubation at AXA, working on Playthora. And in the past year, I left AXA with Playthora and launched this company. So for today, the 3 topics I will address will be first, before talking about second-hand market, of course, it's important to talk about the primary market. So I will talk about retention, of course, as well, as it is the main focus of this topic. And finally, I will deep dive on the second-hand markets and everything it can bring for a game like yours, or maybe a game you have in mind. So talking about primary market. Let's get back a couple of years ago, notably in the 90s, where we have seen the first MMOs. So this is probably the first appearance of what we call in-game market. So typically for Arcadia, for example, was one of the first MMOs with cosmetic items you can buy in-game. So you could buy skins for your characters, like in RuneScape as well. You can buy skins for your player, for your weapon, for your some kind of pets, etc., etc. So this is really, let's say, a model we all know since many years, that has already proven itself, and it's a sustainable model per se. But we do think that there's more you can do with in-game assets. A quick word on free-to-play market, because usually, of course, the games that are selling this kind of virtual items are often, if not always, free-to-play games, or at least games as a service. So this market of free-to-plays represents 60% of the total industry in 2020. It's $80 billion just for this market, and it's representing different kind of assets. So you have, of course, the skins and the cards, let's say tangible items you can buy in game, but you also have everything that is consumable, notably for the mobile, where you can buy the boost, additional lives, etc., etc. So just for the in-game items market, if we talk about really skins, cosmetics, and all these kind of items, this market is representing $30 billion. In terms of monetization models, we have different models. So we have the free-to-play I mentioned, but this is not the only model for games as a service. We have the pay-to-play, which is still there, of course, and I think it will still be there in the coming years, even if it will probably change a little bit, but still the pay-to-play will still be there. We have the freemium, which is usually you have access to a part of the game, and if you want to have the full access to the game, you have to pay at some point. So it's a model that is quite commonly used, notably for the MMOs. And the free-to-play we mentioned, which is used by a lot of different games today, not only on mobile, but also on PC and console. And out of these 3, let's say, main boxes and main monetization models, you have a lot of tools and a lot of additional sources of revenues. So you have, of course, the in-game purchases, but you can have DLCs, which is usually something really used by traditional games, where usually you can pay to play, and then you also have to buy the DLCs coming every 6 months or a year, etc., etc. You have the subscription model, you have the consumables model I mentioned for the, notably for the mobile games, the cosmetics, which is of course well known because of games like League of Legends or Fortnite or Dota, this kind of game. Usually, you can also have loot boxes. So I will not talk a lot about loot boxes because there are pros and cons about loot boxes, but still, this is a model that is still there, and I think it can last, even if some countries are starting to put some let's say a restriction on loot boxes. I think it can still be a good model if it's done well, and if it's not becoming too much of a gambling game. The battle pass as well, we are seeing more and more battle pass. Today, most of the free-to-play games have a battle pass. I think it's a good model for the players and for the publisher, because when you are a player, the battle pass is quite, let's say, the perfect model, because if it is a month where you know you will play and you have a lot of skins or whatever items in the battle pass that you want to have, you will be more willing to pay. And if it is a month where you know you can't play, or you can't play as much as maybe the months before, then you will be more than happy to not pay this month and maybe wait for the next battle pass. So I think the battle pass model is also a super good model for the players and for the publishers. Of course, the ads. So it's a model that is really super used in the mobile market. You can see a lot of games that have ads in it because it's a model that is quite well accepted by the players on mobile. So as long as it is not, let's say, blocking the game, and it's just maybe to accelerate or to unlock something, players are willing to watch ads. It's quite common in this space. And finally, something we are seeing more and more is the cross marketing. So of course, I can mention Fortnite, which is doing a lot of cross marketing with singers, with other brands, etc., etc. So there's a lot of stuff to do on the cross marketing. I think we're just at the beginning of the cross marketing in video games, but I think in the coming years we will see more and more of cross marketing operation in games. So now I will talk about retention, because retention is really, let's say, at the heart of the business model of free-to-play games or games as a service. Because as the games is free, obviously you have to keep your players, because players that are just coming, they will not pay upfront. They will need to stay on the game, enjoy the game, and then they will start to be monetized and start to pay. So retention is really at the core of this model of free-to-play games and games as a service. And it's also super hard to work on retention, because usually, let's say, studios are spending a lot of efforts and they're putting a lot of cash as well in acquisition and in creation, or let's say in the creation phase of the game, in the design, in the development of the game. Then there's a big budget for the marketing at the launch. And what is coming after that is really super hard, because sometimes it has not been well thought before, because of course there was other priorities, other topics that were more interesting and more important at this time. But of course, retention should not be forgotten. After the retention, of course, comes the monetization. So without retention, we'll have no monetization in your game. So that's super important to think about that as different steps of a process. So after you have, let's say, gather the players, players are coming on your game, they are staying on your game, they are willing to pay on your game. Let's say that's a full loop. And what is important as well is to think about what's next, because once they paid, let's say for a skin, for an item, whatever, you want them to come back and to respend at some point. So that's really what we call the reactivation. That's really super important, because sometimes players will leave. They will leave for a month, for 6 months, for a year, but it's not lost. You can always try to reactivate them and make them come back, and then the loop starts again, and you can again start to keep them on the game, active on the game, and then monetize them, etc., etc. So there's many models to calculate retention. So I just kept like to illustrate this, but usually the simplest way of calculating retention is just to calculate the percentage of players that are still playing the game after day 1, day 2, day 3, etc., etc. So that's really, let's say, the basic model. But you can add a lot of different tools or a lot of different ways to calculate retention. It's not only the number of players that are playing the game after a certain number of days. That can also be the number of minutes they play after a couple of days, because usually when players install a game, they're playing a lot on day 1, and you want them to keep playing on your game. So that's super important to also take in consideration the number of minutes they play, notably after a month, after 6 months, etc., etc. So that's KPIs you need to take care of and you need to be aware of. So I mentioned it, of course, retention is super important for games as a service. So the first number I want to drive your attention to is the number of the left. The average free-to-play player retention rate after 30 days is only of 5.5%. So that's not, of course, super big, but that's quite already enough. If you attracted a lot of players, if you kept at least 5% or 6% of them, then you have a pool of players you can work on, and you can make them enjoy more the game, and you can, of course, at some point monetize this audience. What is super hard for games as a service is there are more and more games every day. So you can see every day there's a release of new free-to-play games or more free-to-play games every day. So the competition is super big, and it's super easy to move from a game to another. Let's say if a game just launches and is doing more or less what you do, the same kind, the same genre, whatever, people can play this game in like 5 minutes, just the time to download it, or maybe not 5 minutes for everyone, but a couple of hours later, they can download the game, they can play the game, and basically you have a chance to lose them. What is also, I think, an important KPI is the fact that it costs 5 times or more to acquire a new customer rather than keeping the existing one. And I think this one is super important, because the more money you put on retention, it's actually more revenues and less that you will spend on acquisition. And I think this is key to work on retention. And finally, it has been proved that the duration of the player engagement and the player, let's say, lifetime on your game is correlated with the chances of with the chance of purchases, of course, because the more they play, the more they are willing to pay, because this is why they enjoy the game and they want to sometimes give back to the studio that made the game. Something I like to say is retention starts when the players are clicking on install, because right after they click on install, for example, if the window opens and you see like you have to download 50 giga or 60 gigaoctane of data, sometimes it can be already lost because you have, I don't know, a poor connection. You don't have the place on your hard drive, so you just quit. You were interested, you were willing to test the game, you were willing to jump on, and you can't, just because the file is too big or is the connection is too low. So that's something really important from the install button. So I gathered here a couple of strategies that are used today by the studios to improve the retention. So of course, it's not the easiest one, but the more obvious one is to improve the games. It's just live ops. You have to improve the game. If you want players to come back, if you want players to keep playing your game, you have to improve the game. You have to put new features, you have to put new characters, new items, whatever, but you need to keep them active, and they need to never feel that the game is dying. It's super important, because if at some point they feel the game is dying, they will leave. Even if the game is not dying at all, you have your player base. If it is the feeling that the game is dying, that there is no updates, there is no communication from the studio, people will leave thinking that the game is dying. The second common, let's say, strategy used is working on your community, your social base. Let's say all your players that are here, that are playing the game, and that are willing to test new features and to test everything. So you need to communicate with them. You need to discuss with your players. You need to know what they want. You need to ask them what they want. And it's not it's not that common to see publisher or studio that are not asking anything to their players. They are not asking what they want. They are not asking what they would like to see in the next year or in the next patch to come. So that's really something super important. And also, so you have this kind of let's say discussion with your players, but you need also to put something in place for your players to communicate between themselves, because that's also something super useful, and you will see players discussing themselves, and you can learn a lot by reading what your players are discussing between themselves as well. So you have the forums, of course, Discord, whatever, but you can have something in-game as well. So that's super important to have this kind of social features. I'm still wondering sometimes why on multiplayer games you have no friends list, for example. That should not happen. If you're playing a multiplayer games, you want to play with your friends, so you need to have a way to contact them in game, to see when they are online, this kind of stuff. So that's mandatory for me. Monetization per se is also a retention strategy, because if players feel they are getting milked, for example, or if they feel that the monetization system in place is really trying to drag them to put more money every time, they will leave. That's also a reason to leave. When you see a game every month, they are launching new stuff, new items, new patch, and you have to pay them to be, let's say, at the level of your friends, at the top level when you're playing competitively, this kind of stuff. That will make people leave. So that's also something to have in mind. Monetization can also be a good way of retention, or a potential danger for people to leave. Then you have a lot of other tools, like you can add quests and rewards. So you have the weekly quest, the daily quest, which are super commonly used in this space. The rewards as well. So the rewards need to be good enough so that players want to play, but not too big so that players feel that the reward is cool, and it's not like, okay, they are giving everything. So I have no challenge on this game. I will leave as well. Events and esports. It's of course not something that all games or all studios can apply, but if you have the funds to do so, and you have the capacity of organizing this kind of events, that's super cool, because players, when they leave a game, that doesn't mean they are cutting everything. They are not reading anymore what's around this game. So sometimes when you have like a big competition of esports, you will see that players will come back. And we have seen this in many games, of course, League of Legends or this kind of giants, but esports is also a good way to make people, oh yeah, I love this game. I haven't played in 6 months. Okay, let's come back and let's play again. And maybe they will stay again for 6 months and leave again, etc., etc. But at least they are coming back, and maybe that's another opportunity for you to monetize this audience. If you don't have like the money to make super big esports events, you can do in-game events. That's working super well. You can have the obvious Christmas, Easter, you know, this kind of events that players love, because that's a way to unlock skins usually. That's a way to unlock stuff in game, to unlock cards, to unlock whatever. So that's a good way to keep them alive and to make them come back at a specific point. You can have crossovers as well with some other games. So that's just a couple of examples that are used today by the studios to keep their players alive and make them come back. But crossovers is also a good way of working with other studios and to make people enjoy your game. So now I will of course address the topic of the session, which is really the second-hand market. Because before jumping into it, quick word on second-hand markets. It's not something super common in the industry. You can see it, for example, on Counter-Strike Go on Steam, but and on other, of course, games on Steam, and notably Dota, or all the games of Valve. But except this small pool of studios that are allowing this kind of transactions, it's usually black market and gray market only. So a quick concept before jumping into the second-hand market is just to talk about the lifetime value of your player, because the lifetime value is basically how much money will your player bring you during the time they are playing the game. So you have, again, like retention, you have different ways to calculate the lifetime value of a player. You can have the average revenue per daily active user. You can have the average number of transactions a player will make in their lifetime on your game, etc., etc. What is funny is outside of the game world, second-hand markets are everywhere. I mean, you're buying a car, you're buying a phone, you're buying even clothes, whatever you want to buy, you have a second-hand market for it. So you can buy either on the primary market or on the secondary market. And on video games, it's super hard and it's almost impossible to do so. So I mentioned Steam, of course, which is the most well known for the community market. So they are doing it on Steam, notably, but this is not the only way to trade. Let's call it on Counter-Strike Go items. You can also go to other, let's say, outside of Steam markets, which are usually a little bit blurry because you don't really know if you have the right to do it, if you are totally doing something legal or maybe not. So it's always a little bit weird to trade on this kind of website. So players are not super at ease to do so, but still, it's today the biggest market for second-hand items, virtual items. Roblox has also a big second-hand market. So on Roblox, it's more skins, hats you can have for your characters in game. So that's that's basically what you can buy here. But you can also buy community creation. So you can buy UGC. You can have a lot of other items created by other players that you can wear as well in game. So you have a lot of stuff. You have the full list on the left of the screen, but they are opening this market because this is the core of Roblox. Roblox is a community game. Players are creating the game. Players are playing the games created by other players, and players can create items, and players can buy other player items, etc., etc. So this is really at the core of this whole system. Minecraft is a little bit similar. You can buy, let's say, packs of texture, of blocks, of maps already done by other players. So you have a sort of market that is based on UGC, on maps, on games, etc., etc. So you have a lot of stuff that you can buy on Minecraft because it's similar to Roblox. That's really the same core that is behind. So I mentioned it for Counter-Strike, but the black market is not only related to Counter-Strike, actually. When you see all these black market websites, you can see that basically you have account selling on each and every multiplayer games. And I mean, each and every game, you can find anything on this kind of markets. So for a cheap price, you can buy an account that is either at max level, that is either at a specific rank, that is owning specific skins, for example. So the account selling is really super big, and it's estimated to $50 billion. So of course, this number is worth what it's worth, but this is what usually is said on the black market. It's supposedly reaching $50 billion of transaction every year. The other thing that we can see is sometimes the in-game currency selling. So this is, of course, mostly for MMOs, but MMOs farming and trading is super common. So you can buy gold for WoW, you can buy this kind of in-game currency that players are farming or bots are farming, and then they are selling it for a couple of dollars or euros on this kind of black market platform. And the final thing you can see on this kind of website is the account boosting. So that's typically on multiplayer competitive games. So you want, I don't know, to reach a certain rank, to reach a certain level, to reach a certain objective for your account. So you're just giving your account to a better player than you, and they are boosting your account for a couple of euros or dollars. I wanted also to address, I an example that is always mentioned when we're talking about in-game second-hand markets, which is Diablo 3, because Diablo 3 tried to implement real money trading in Diablo 3, and they were trying to take back this kind of black market and integrate it directly within the game. So contrary to WoW, that did it quite well because WoW has implemented as well a way to buy gold and in-game currency with euros and dollars. Diablo 3 tried to put this kind of peer-to-peer market where players can resell and buy between themselves items they have found and they have found within the game. So on the principle, I think that was a super good idea. What went wrong actually is that the game has been impacted by this market, because now the game was not only, let's say, a farming game where you can compare what you did with your friends and with other players. Now it was becoming a pay to win, because you were able to buy all the stuff with money. And we know that in Asia, the pay to win model is quite commonly accepted. In Western countries, it is not. So this is what killed this second-hand market on Diablo 3. This world real money trading has totally negatively impacted the game and the experience for the players. So that's also where the line should not be crossed. Sorry. That's because it impacted the experience for the players, and that's went of course bad, let's call it, and they had to shut down the market after a couple of weeks live. The thing is, if the black market exists, there's a reason for that. It's because they are asking to resell something. They want to be able to resell their skins. So I just took a couple of examples I found on Twitter recently, a couple of days ago, but typically Brawl Stars, they asked, what do you want to be added as features on Brawl Stars? And you can see in the answers, the skin trading is coming every tweet. They want to be able to trade skin. Valorant, likewise, give us skin trading. This is what players want. Fortnite, not different. So all these games where you can buy skins, where you can buy cards, players want to be able to resell their skin, because you're buying a skin, you are using it for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months, and then a new skin is coming out, or you're just playing another character or whatever, and you don't want to use it anymore, and it's just lost money. So you have something on your account that has no value, that has literally no use, where it could become, I don't know, something, either you can resell it for a cheaper price, or it can also become something worth more money. It can become a real asset. It can become something like a collectible. So there's many ways to think about skin trading, notably. And that's really sad to see that today it's not a topic that is really used by the studios and by the publishers to engage more with their players, because this is something the players are asking for. When we worked on Playthora, sorry, we worked with economists to understand a little bit more the impact, of course, for the players, but also for the studio and for the publishers. So the estimation we did with them was showing that the average in-game spending for each player could be up to 25%. And the global average revenue for the publisher or for the studio could be up to 80%. So that may sound super big and super enormous, but there's two reasons to that. The first one is that players that are already spending today will spend more, because if they can resell something, they are more willing to pay. They are already paying. So they are willing to pay for your assets. So if you offer them the chance to, let's say, have more value on what they buy, they will be more willing to spend more. And that's something that we can see in other physical markets. The second pool of people you will reach is first the players that are not buying today. So just a quick note is that today you have between 5 and 10% of the players that are buying items. It can be up to 15 for some rare games, but usually it's more 5 to 10. And these players, when you ask them, why aren't you buying anything? One of the first reasons they mention is because it is either too expensive or it has no midterm or long-term interest. So having a second-hand market will impact these players as well, because more of this pool of players that are not buying today will buy, thanks to the second-hand market. And by accumulating this, so the pool of players that are buying that will buy more, and the players that are not buying today but that will buy, this is why you can explain this kind of super big figures or super big increase of revenues for the publisher. Why now is a good timing to do so? So I think the blockchain games are really paving the way of second-hand markets, because what we see with this world of NFTs and blockchain and everything is that, sure, it's super speculative and we don't expect players to spend 100K for a skin. That's not exactly the same market. For me, that's a complementary market, but still, what's behind this whole economy of NFTs and the economy of gaming blockchain is that they are offering something the players want. They are offering this option of earning what you buy and really earning it. So that's not anymore something you buy and then if you leave the game or if you just want to, if you don't want to use it anymore, that's just lost money. No, you can have value out of it. So of course, Axie Infinity is probably the biggest one at the moment, but that's basically Pokemon with NFTs. So every Pokemon you breed or you trade or whatever has a value, and that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And when you see like the revenues for Axie Infinity compared to other popular games like WoW, Fortnite, or League of Legends per user, you can see that this is not the same population. I mean, you do not expect all of your players to spend 100 euros or $100 every month. Of course, that's not exactly what you expect. But still, there's I think a way to find a just in between these NFTs and between the existing market where everything is locked. I think there's many opportunities to work on that. I think that's just the beginning, and I think notably for UGC or all these topics, if you're working on a game with UGC, please allow your players to be able to resell what they do, because I think that's really the core of these kind of games. And if you're just selling skins, trading card games, these kind of games, likewise, think about the value of a second-hand market, because I'm really convinced that there's value for you and for your players. So at the end, everyone is winning. Thank you for your attention. Now I think I will be able to answer your question if you have any.